So now we are entering to the particular topic about advocacy. I think this is quite timely because with the current situation in Jakarta and Bogor, where the independent refugee live, and we have several settings there in the IOM community housing, to the urban setting where a refugee live with the local community, as well as the some informal space such as in Kalideres, and then also the areas such as in Aceh, Medan, Pekanbaru. So I believe this event mainly targeting refugee and asylum seeker community in Indonesia primarily. However, some non-refugee participants might also attend also on this forum. With the advocacy as a topic, we have speakers from three different fora, which is from the regional fora. I believe Hafsat already introduced herself, but I will introduce her more later. And then the second speaker, we will have Mbak Nino from the RDUREF, and later with also UNHCR Indonesia as the speaker for today's discussion. But before we actually have this discussion, we will have an opening speech from Swaka. But for a quick house rules, allow me to share a little bit about the house rule for today's discussion. And kindly let me know, because I won't be able to see your screen if my voice is breaking up or if you cannot see or hear what I say. So for the basic house rules for the event is that first, kindly mute your microphone while the speakers are, oops, sorry, cannot see, there we go. Kindly mute your microphone while the speaker presenting their materials. If you have any questions, we strongly recommend that you write it down on the chat box. I believe several organizations who are present here will have several ways to follow up, or if you would like to ask the question later. I think from the regional, Hafsat already shared her contacts as well. And I believe Swaka will have another consultation meeting. The UNHCR might have different mechanism to approach them through their website. But just in case the questions cannot be addressed on this forum, then there is several other mechanisms that you can use. But my recommendation is use the chat box. We will still have the Q&A session, but with a limited time, I cannot promise you as moderator to actually handle them all. The next one would be the principal use of this session is safe space. You don't have to put your real name on the list. You don't also have to mention your name. Non-discrimination, confidentiality of personal information. If some of you are actually working on cases, whether you're actually a company or help your friends, please be mindful to not just dropping names or identification of those people to make sure that they are well protected as well. Do no harm and human rights protection are another aspects and principles that we try to respect on this session. Across the session, there will be attendance form shared to record your attendance from Swaka. But please note that this information shared through the form will be kept confidential for Swaka internal team and reporting mechanism. Just for disclaimer, the meeting will be recorded for internal documentation. So for those of you who don't want to put your real name, this is the time to change it, because right after this house rule communication, my colleague from Swaka will start record the event. Last but not least, the webinar might not be best to be used for personal individual case follow-up to any organization involved. My recommendation, if you would like to raise a particular topic, don't put a particular name, especially if the case is actually probably affecting to several people or several individuals, or maybe a particular community, that would be best. Please use a sign mechanism by the related organization to follow up on individual cases. The idea is just simply to make sure that we can cover pretty much as possible for question and answer, and to focus specifically on the topic of advocacy. And the most important thing is how we can be all involved inclusively, including the refugees community, under the spirit of, meaningful participation to make sure that the agenda of advocacy can be conducted by refugees, non-refugees at the local, national, and even regional level. All right, so that would be all from me in terms of the house rules. And without further ado, I will hand over to Mas Angga, who will be the representative of SWACA and who will open for today's session. He's been the coordinator for legal aid and empowerment in SWACA since 2021. So he's been handling quite a lot of legal aid cases for the refugees in Indonesia, as well as nurturing these empowerment activities, including this event. So, Mas Angga, over to you for the opening speech.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mas Gading, for the welcoming speech. I won't take much time for all of you because I also very excited to hear from the presentators and also to hear from the refugee communities who attend the session. But I would like to open this discussion forum with Happy World Human Rights Day, everyone. To be very honest with all of you, today is a very dilemmatic situations. At one point and at one side, when we are commemorating a big day like this, we should be happy, and we are happy because we see a lot of best practices in terms of human rights, protections, and also in terms of legal empowerment, and also in terms of empowerment efforts towards the refugee communities. But at one side, we are also seeing a lot of situations, a lot of things happening in the communities that are very concerning right now. And it is related to human rights protections that we are very concerned right now. That's why SWACA choose the words reflection with the topics today, because when we are hearing the words of reflections, we can reflect about all things related to human rights protections of refugees on both sides of positives and also the things that we need to provide improvements. That's why this forum is a forum to seek collaborations. 2025 is coming up very soon, and there are things happening that might be very important to be reflected on 2025 on both refugee communities and also in civil society. So please use this forum as a forum to discuss about this and also to raise your inquiries also. And I'm always happy to see that there are a lot of refugee brothers and sisters that we've already engaged with to discuss about anything that related to your communities, and that's why we are also conducting the session. And just lastly, just to confirm what Mas Gading has said in the welcoming speech, I know this is a forum that are very time bound. There is a limitation on time, but later on, SWACA is planning to conduct another refugee community hearing session, presumably on January. That could be another session that you can use to raise your concerns and also issues in your communities if the time is not enough today. So there is still plenty of chances. Even you don't have to wait for any forum like this to raise your issues. You can contact SWACA and also other civil society organizations. We are very open to hear your discussion. This is just a media to raise your issues and also to seek collaborations. Thank you so much. I will pass it back again to Mas Gading, and really excited to hear from the presentators today.
Thank you very much, Mas Angga, and thank you, SWACA, for organizing this event. And also, great thank you for the reminder that this is a moment of reflection as well on the advocacy works into 2024 and probably in the past, as well as how we can collaborate better in 2025. Hopefully, some ideas sparks from this discussion about the potential advocacy fora that we can do it together, and what the refugee community can also take part of, and hopefully in the future take lead on the advocacy work. So for the first speaker, we will be discussing about the regional and I believe international context as well, where we will try to hear about the updates on the forcible displacement in the region, international advocacy process that's happening at the moment, and the priority of issues for refugee rights protection advocacy that possibly the challenge identified in the regional level, and if it's possible, probably the comparison between Indonesia and other neighboring country, good practices, and all other relevant materials. For those kind of topics, we already have Hafsar Tamisuddin, who is currently the Secretary General of Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network. Um, and she's been working within the regional and international level, a former Rohingya refugee who is now resettled and is still very active in the refugee right activism with many organizations. Hafsar also co-founded the Rohingya, correct me if I'm wrong, Maya Fui Nor Collaborative Network, sorry Hafsar, an advocacy group of Rohingya Refugee Protection and Solidarity Network. Hafsar, thank you so much for having you here at this forum. And I know that you've been ill after so many traveling. So thank you so much for actually sparing your time here. And please know that Hafsar might leave actually after her session. So we will extend a little bit of question and answer specifically for Hafsar. Otherwise, feel free to contact her over the email. Hafsar, the floor is yours for 20 minutes.
Thank you so much. I hope I will not pass COVID through the Zoom. I don't think we can pass COVID through Zoom. I'm having COVID. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Yeah, I also see many Rohingya brothers and sisters there. If you ever need me to speak in Rohingya as well, I can do that to some session. And if you have questions, you can also ask me in Rohingya, and I'm happy to do both Rohingya and English as well. So the first thing you have put me is the root cause. It is, yeah, I don't think many of you don't know. You do know. It's just because, as you have mentioned, today is the International Human Rights Day. It's just for us to reflect again, why do the people actually leave the country? It is not that people do not know, it's about our ignorance, particularly by many countries in Southeast Asia. And I have to be critical about my neighboring countries itself, and also many international communities. Instead of assuming and viewing refugees and other forcibly displaced people as a burden, we need to look at why do the people leave the country? What are the reasons that are forcing them to leave? So particularly for Rohingya and Myanmar and Afghanistan, is because of the yes, your Rohingya, yes, you can share your Rohingya current situation. You will have a lot of opportunity. Just let me finish my thing first so I can give some rest of my voice. So the root cause is, just to reiterate, is because of the ongoing war inside Myanmar, internally, and then also in Afghanistan. Of course, there is no immediate comprehensive solution to Myanmar, whether internally or to the neighboring countries where people flee and compelled to leave from the countries because of the risks to their survival. Particularly now, right now in Mongdo and Butidong in Arakan state, people are living like life and death, and the Rohingya communities are being recruited as human shield by the Arakan army. There are so many human rights violations happening. They have only two choices. You either die inside the country or you leave. And when the Rohingya leave, there is not any countries nearby that will welcome them. Instead, there is a lot of pushback. And Afghanistan, the same. There is a lot of ongoing human rights violations happening in our region. The reason that I'm speaking both for Afghanistan and Rohingya and Myanmar is because the two major displacement issues that we prioritize to do advocacy on by APRIN, Asia Pacific Refugee Right Network, in our regions are Afghanistan and Myanmar. And of course, after the coup in 2021, the displacement and human rights violation is not only affecting Rohingya, it is also affecting many other ethnic groups inside Myanmar, which then forcing many other people from Myanmar, from different ethnic groups, to flee and escape to the neighboring countries such as Thailand, Malaysia, and some small scale to Indonesia. Of course, again, the lack of political will as well by both countries and neighboring countries. These are the very big root cause of why people feel compelled and forcibly migrating to different countries, taking the risks of life and death situation. And most case scenario, Rohingyas and other ethnic groups and Afghanistan refugees do not have the safe pathway to escape from the countries. They have to take the very risky journey due to either lack of legal documents or many other security issues that you all know. I don't assume that you do not know, just to reflect again. So the latest update on data, I did not do all the research for the data, but roughly speaking, I also know there was another speaker from UNHCR, they can tell more, is that we have now 15 million somehow displaced people in Asia and Pacific region. A big numbers are from Myanmar and Afghanistan again. And these people are displaced in big number, of course, in Bangladesh, and then Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, India, and so forth, many other countries. Also, other issues are we still have a lot of limited resources. Sorry, I need to some latest update are not very good news. A lot of updates are we're still struggling in its sustainability when it comes to advocacy work. There is ongoing human rights violations happening inside the countries again, and then also in the refugee camps. In terms of updates regarding international-based advocacy, processes aiming at improving, one of the things that we are really interested in as APREN is looking at how do we follow up, because the last 2023 December Global Refugee Forum, where I participated, also many other refugees participated, including Rohingyas. There are some mega multi-stakeholder pledges that were made, both for Rohingyas and also for Afghanistan. These pledges are signed by many big countries from Global North, Global South, and some countries from ASEAN, committing to little things, to bigger things, and medium things, finance, economic, other small little things. But then the issue is, during the refugee forum, it is very easy for the people to say that I'm going to do this, do this, do this. The struggle is after the forum, following up and then telling them, look, you told us that you were going to do this. Where is this? What is happening? So this is our opportunities. And then we had a meeting with Regional Bureau UNHCR in Bangkok, as well as I met some people. I was in Geneva, Switzerland, France, and Netherlands. In Malaysia last month, five weeks. I only came back five days ago. That's why I had COVID, because I'm so exhausted. So all these countries where I had meeting with different people from United Nations, United Nations for Human Rights Council, and Special Reporter, they all say the same thing. We're still working on following up all this commitment and pledges and all that. Still looking into how do we find different entry points through different mechanisms, pledges, commitment, and ASEAN, and also the little conventions. Of course, many countries in our region did not sign 1951. There is no way. But then, is there any little things that we can look at, like CRC, Convention on the Rights of Children, and CEDAW and all this? So still, it's on the radar. There is still hope. First and foremost, we get a yes that people are saying that we're going to commit money, we're going to do this, we're going to take such and such number of refugees to Canada, Australia, and blah, 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 United States, and 10,000. So there are some forward movement happening. One particular significant thing is, for me, during my advocacy period of this almost 2 decades, has been always challenging to convince many resettled countries to take refugees from Bangladesh for a number of reasons. It's not about the countries, resettled countries are not wanting to take refugees. Bangladesh government is so concerned it will become a pull factor. If we allow refugees to leave from Bangladesh, it is ridiculous. Of course, we don't talk about root cause and push factor. We talk so much about pull factor. But then the good thing is now finally there is some resettlement happening from Bangladesh on a smaller scale. And of course, the person from UNHCR can tell you more. And then that includes also during, again, going back to 2023 Global Refugee Forum, countries like United States, Canada, and Australia are committing to certain number of refugee resettlement from Bangladesh. These are some forward movement. And then what we see as the priority issues for refugees, right protection in our region. I think we are so stuck on talking about only repatriation, which is great and which is inevitable, which is the most important solution for this massive number of displacement. Refugee resettlement is less than 1%. We can't dream about resettling all refugees. I'm still pleasantly surprised. Every time I go to countries like Malaysia, and Bangkok and Thailand, they'll be like, what is UNHCR doing? Why are they not resettling all these 200,000 refugees? I was like, oh my God, you work in the government and policy level, and you don't even have this very basic knowledge that out of 108 million something, only less than 1% of refugees get resettled worldwide. And then you think resettlement is the only solution. That's, to me, is the ignorance, again, the ignorance by many countries. So we find it very challenging, also fascinating, that many countries in Southeast Asia and then Asia and Pacific region thinks repatriation is the only solution, resettlement is the only solution. Many countries like Bangladesh and India and Malaysia will not even come to the table. If we say, can we talk about dual solution? But we think dual is so important because the hard reality is repatriation is not going to happen in the next 2 years. I can guarantee you, both for Afghanistan and Myanmar. And resettlement, we're going to bring everybody to another country for sure. So we cannot lose sight of other solutions such as durable solution. Thinking about economic inclusion of refugees in countries where they are displaced right now. Also looking into not just one way of resettlement, also complementary pathway, which is happening in a smaller scale, but we need to look into even deeper. Because some countries, when they do resettlement for complementary pathway, they have this very fancy and demanding requirement for refugees to get resettled. There was like, you must have such and such education. You must have such and 10 years of working experience. You must have such and such fancy fluent English. I said, all the requirement that you put is almost sounds to me like excluding intentionally the stateless people and Rohingyas, because Rohingyas do not have any certificate to give it to you. Rohingyas cannot prove you 20 years of working experience. You cannot anticipate refugees to come to your country with the flesh and fluent English. So what needs to also happen is that to look into, of course, there will be labor mobility and complementary pathway. We also need to look at how do we make sure this complementary pathway are inclusive? In a way, we do it through capacity building of refugee communities as well. So these are the priorities. And of course, resettlement, we cannot, just because resettlement is not the only solution, we cannot forget this is one of the solutions. We must keep it as it maintained. And then we must still push forward to still advocating to increase the number some way, somehow. Of course, now that we know the outcome of US election, which is overwhelming and stressful, and the numbers are decreasing, but it does not mean we cannot, advocate and find other entry points. We must. And then repatriation, we must not at all forget about this main bigger goal. And we constantly need to talk about repatriation, but then we also have to learn the lesson from the 1992 repatriation. How did it happen? Did we do that without consulting with the Rohingya communities? And we just like, okay, international communities, we're expert, we know what is best for you. You go home. And then when these people went back and another massive atrocities happened, nobody was there to be accountable for the communities. And then these people who escaped from this 1992 repatriation, again, they are still living in Bangladesh. So we must always remember that when we do repatriation this time, we must make sure it is consulted, it is based on the best interest of the community. We are very certain and sure that there is successful reintegration of Rohingya communities, while also ensuring their safety and protection inside the country. Of course, the challenges, I have mentioned it already, it's about, I think we can all relate if there are many organizational representatives here, because APRIN certainly is going through this. The funding shrinking for many organizations that do a lot of advocacy in our space. So that means, as I mentioned, if people choose to work in the human rights space, you're not going to get paid enough. You will be working a lot of hours. On top of it, there is a challenge of how do we maintain the assistance of such network and organization to keep pushing the advocacy momentum that we have built through 10 years. Now we have come this far. If we then cannot no longer sustain it, it's such a shame to come backward. So funding is also a big major challenge in the sector, and comparing other emerging human rights issues in the global north, Palestine, Gaza, and so forth. And on top of it, there is also lack of political will. Many countries, again. I can tell you one example is in Malaysia. I was displaced in Malaysia for almost 10 years. So we've been pushing for this one advocacy, only one, walk right for the refugees. We keep selling this idea to the Malaysia government and say, look, even if you don't allow them to walk, they are walking. All your building in this Putrajaya, Penang, these buildings are being built by the Rohingya and then other refugees. Little money, but they work so hard. Can we now allow them to walk? By doing that, it will not cost you anything. They will pay you tax, but still, government will not say yes. And that then speak the volumes of lack of political will and then seeing the reality of the issue. They still dream somehow that UN can take all people somehow to a paradise or the resettlement. It's not going to happen. So the other very major challenge is this lack of political will by many ASEAN countries, not only Malaysia. I'm just giving you one example. Also in Thailand, also in Bangladesh, also in Indonesia to some degree. And then India, they don't even want to talk about it. You don't have any access in India to detention and refugees. You have no idea what kind of human rights violations happening. Nobody have access to. So these are the challenges. And there is also sometimes the politicians, unfortunately, in our region used the marginalized group to alter the attention of the people when and if things get hard. And then what is happening now is xenophobia, because there is fear from the local community is that if the refugees are allowed to walk, if we then show them some sympathy, which they did very kindly, particularly for Indonesia, they showed their love and mercy and kindness, but then eventually somehow there is fear arise, because the truth is the local community themselves are struggling so much. There is poverty, there is struggle. So this is also becoming very challenging. So the challenge is if we don't show mercy to them, if they cannot get resettled, if they cannot also go back to their country, if the places and countries where refugees are, yes, you have 4 minutes, thank you, also not willing to allow them to integrate, what do? Do we kill them? So again, lack of political will, and then we need to find a lot of the entry point. So compare the situation, I sort of touched upon a little bit. I will not say there is massive differences between Indonesia, other than one very beautiful example that I always proudly mention, and Indonesia has been champion in terms of showing their leadership in this rescuing Rohingya in Aceh a while back then, very welcoming, love, and then allowing them to disembark, which is not the case for many other countries. But then the sad reality is now we are having a little bit of difficulty in that. So there was something that I thought was very amazing. And then we are very sad to see that it is now a little bit walking backward. And we need to find a way of how do we tackle the sympathy of the communities. The one good things that we have seen from Thailand is alternative to detention, or particularly for children. They have done better compared to many other countries. Malaysia has done something, but it's not very great. And in terms of detention, it's still so difficult, both in Thailand, Malaysia, and India, as I've sort of mentioned, access to detention is really difficult. And the human rights violation in detention for Rohingyas, both in Malaysia and India, is terrible, terrible. So 2 years ago, Rohingyas detainees tried to escape from detention of Malaysia. There was some shooting happen. You may all as well seen by Al Jazeera News covering that. So still the situations are not improving. NGOs and organizations like us don't have access to it. Best practices and achievement on the refugee protection this year. I think the best thing that I've seen so far is this coordination between SWACA, APRIN, and refugee-led initiative, refugee-led organization, also including impacted community themselves. It was so significant, and we saw the immediate, how quickly, how practically, realistically, people, communities are able to deliver what the community needs. When we have the RLIs, refugee-led initiative, refugee-led organization, the communities are working with us. So we then slowly, as you have mentioned, Karin, very, very nicely, Anga, is that eventually we hope the community will take the lead. We're just supporting this transitioning, because there is also a danger of if we do it very quickly, too quick, like, okay, now you take the lead, then there is a danger of failing, because we need to do systematically training, mentoring, and supporting them. So eventually in the near future, they are ready and they take the lead, and we them surround them and support. So this to me, is a very good practices, and we should keep up. And then for APRN is trying to engage in different national, international, global platform, because as I said, in Global North, nobody know about Myanmar. I went to an event in Brussels, it's called European Humanitarian Forum. About 58 countries come to the stage and talk about their commitment. They mention about all the countries, nobody talk about Myanmar. And I was so surprised. What kind of humanitarian forum is that? A genocide taking place in Southeast Asia, nobody know? I was like, oh my God. So it is so important for us to constantly remind, hey, look, we will stand in solidarity with you for the issues emerging in Global North. We are also here. There's also people dying here. Also people, like in the past, there was an Alan boy from Syria, was so famous. He was found dead. You may as well know, some of you. It made the front page of newspaper. I said, do you know there are also many Rohingya islands who died in the river of Naf between Bangladesh and Myanmar, but nobody talk about it. So I think it is so important, and the good practice is to constantly, as we stand in solidarity for the issues that already have visibility, also constantly reminding that there are communities, particularly for Rohingyas and other, who are not getting enough attention that they should. There is discrimination, exclusion from many systems. So I think that is so important for us to stay engaged and then keep updating and drawing the international and ASEAN attention. Because one thing that they push back from Global North is, how's that great? Okay, we hear you. What is ASEAN doing? And then that's when I find myself in a very difficult spot. I was like, well, ASEAN is, and I don't have much to say. So we still have to do that. And then I also see there is an opportunity is that one major challenge is because we don't have refugee policy in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific region, people can just say, no, it's not our business. So I think we need to constructively, coordinatively push for this refugee policy. So the countries in our region are in a better position to respond when and if people emerge and arrive, and when we face challenges, so we can tackle a way in a way that uplift both communities, refugees and local. It's not only Rohingyas or Myanmar or Afghanis, also uplifting the local communities. I think these are some good opportunities for us to look at. And also, I was in Geneva doing this course for human rights fellowship things, and I found many different platforms for us, like special reporter on Myanmar, special reporter on Afghanistan. There was mechanism, UPR, where we as the organization and individual can still fit into the bigger ecosystem as a collective. So I think I don't have it right now. When I'm feeling a bit better, I can share the link and all of that if people are interested in. And I will encourage to do that, because the issue is, if you're not there, you are not there. You need to be there, including the refugees from the refugee camp. You must find a way of how do you still incorporate in that United Nations where people are making decisions in Geneva are still having input from you. It's so important. So I will share the UN mechanism and platform where we can share all of that. And I'll stop here and I'll answer some questions people have it.
Thank you, Hafsar. I know you've been really struggling with the voice that you have. Thank you so much. And sharing so many contexts as well from our neighboring country all the way to Geneva. I'll probably start abusing my role as moderator now by asking probably $1 million questions relating to the context of Southeast Asia, which majority are non-signatory country, and because this is linked with the today's topic on human rights, and you also at the end mentioned specifically about the UN human rights mechanism. So my questions is, how can we, in our attempt to actually including the refugee-led organization, the refugee community, from different community in different places, like in Indonesia, different community might have different challenges. How do you think we can actually utilize that in the context of a non-signatory country engaging with human rights mechanism with a totally different capacity? So, and the $1 million question, is it effective? Because there's always a question, no? We move away from the 1951 convention, and we have now with the Global Compact on Refugee, we've got the Global Refugee Forum, and soon we will have a high-level official meeting, I think, next year. Is it really effective to actually bring impact to the local needs on the ground? Over to you.
It is, but the problem is, if I may be very frank and bold, is that UN is very bureaucratic in many ways. They are very old ways. They're like, maybe it's because, if I may be very bold again, it is influenced by many European. Western thinking is so one way straightforward. There is no other way. And difficult for us to get access to even the network like Aprin. And for me, for diaspora like me, who are privileged position, to have access to this little corridor of UN Security Council and know and speak to these people have been still difficult. But there is a but. For the people who have already known this corridor, it's become our responsibility now. Now, I asked all this difficult question, I have to tell you, last month, when I was at this Council of Europe, United Nations, and then meeting with this prosecutor, all of them, I asked the same question. Now that you told me you have this mechanism, will you be open to, if I make sure that this is accessible to the people from the ground? How do the people who are still inside facing human rights violation in the refugee camp, massive human rights violation, nobody's even documenting, if they want to input in your UPR to the special reporter, will the special reporter make time and listen to? If the special reporter is too busy, what is other platform? So they said, Hafsa, yes, we are open to. So there is hope. I can only say that there is hope. And I can also tell you that the movement, the momentum, and the changes in the advocacy space, it doesn't come at an easy price in a short time. It also doesn't come on a bigger scale. I'm sorry to tell you this. It comes in a smaller scale. You have to commit a lot, dedicate a lot, invest a lot, and sacrifice a lot. You have to challenge a lot. So also there is a problem of you challenging a lot. When people like you and me challenge the system so much, there's a risk of you not being invited again the next time. I was like, I don't care. I still have to ask you the question. So there is hope. So there are some mechanism. They are now willing to listen. But I have to tell you that there are still some bureaucracy. There are still some areas in the system. There is no black and white. You still have to go through different channel to get to the point. So I think that is where the role of us, like Aprin, the network, the people who are connected to them, we can always go back. You told us that you will allow these people on the ground to be incorporated here. They will have some positive impact. Now people are here. Why you are not doing this? So that is our job now, to hold them accountable. If that
All
answers your
right.
question.
Deb, thank you so much. I like the statement that there is a hope, but yeah, so many works to be done and so many bridges needs to be built between the regional, the national, and the community itself. Is there any questions on the? I couldn't find any questions on the message, but if anyone have questions, feel free to raise your hand, specifically for Hafsa. Otherwise, then I'll probably give maybe around 1 or 2 minutes for Brother Rohamidul, who would like to share the current situation in Pekanbaru. Oh, Pak Masud. Pak Masud is actually also will be one of the responder later at the end. So maybe Pak Masud, quick questions, and then Rohamidul, if you would like to share the Rohingya current situation in Pekanbaru, so it can be raised as well. Pak Masud, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Gading, and thank you for Ms. Hafsar for giving me opportunity to ask you about the Rohingya refugee crisis ongoing in Indonesia. So my question is, Ms. Hafsar, I think she knows better than me about IOM, what is doing with the Rohingya refugees in Indonesia currently. Like from 2019, IOM have been helping to Rohingya refugees with fully allowance and with fully house accommodation. But from this month, they will withdraw the accommodation from Rohingya refugees who registered after 2019. And IOM already decreased the allowance money from 1,250,000 to 1,050,000 idea. So, Ms. Hafsar, can you explain about this? What can we do for IOM? Yeah, that's.
You on mute, Karim. I've got
Thank
my.
you. Yeah, I was going to ask you, should we wait maybe for Rohamidul if he would like to share a little bit, so then I believe the context might be quite similar with what shared by Pak Masud.
Yeah, go ahead, Hamidul.
Pak Hamidul, do you want to add a little bit on this? You asked if you would like to share a little bit of the situation. I think Pak Mas should share about the situation on the IOM situation and the new policy of cut off. Otherwise, Waalaikumsalam.
So thank you so much for giving opportunity to share about the ongoing our situation in what is going in Pekanbaru. So my name is Hamidul Haq. I was live in Aceh, the province, Pule camp. So I live in there almost months ago. After some I have problem, some issue. That's why I come in Pekanbaru. Right now I live in 2 months ago. So after I come here, I see many. I got many challenges here. So right now I live in Pekanbaru near the immigration detention, one of the camp. More than Rohingya refugees are living here. 500 over. So currently in this camp there is no of the electric and also no the proper access. Just only the IOM provide the allowance monthly allowing monthly 1,050,000. Also here is many kind of the here is no the civil organization, just IOM provide. Also many kind of Rohingya are living like the forest. So also the IOM a decision just who are coming in Indonesia since in 2019. Already they are who give the hotel, they leave them.
Okay. Is that all, Pak Hamidul? I think it's quite similar with the IOM context. So
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
if you are
okay.
not, if you guys are not clear, let me explain it nicely. So IOM already cut the allowance and the accommodation from Pekanbaru, and IOM will start to cut the accommodation from Medan from 30 December 2024, and there is many Rohingya refugees. They are living in the little mount, not a big mount, which IOM rent from the owner. And IOM said that IOM over budget, IOM cannot help anymore.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think Hafsar, I'm sorry that this question goes to you, and unfortunately we don't have IOM speaker here, but I think to frame that, I mean, if you would like to respond that, feel free to do so in case you have any engagement with IOM. But also, I think it's relating to the questions from Pak Hasan Ratek, I think here, from Pak Ratek. I think if there is any concern that actually involving international organization and or international NGO, that the community feel it's part of the human rights sort of a situation like this, like a human rights related complaints like this, what would be the best way to address? Because it's not only the government who are the duty bearers, but also sometimes it can be extended to people like us. So over
Yes.
to you, Hafsar.
Okay. So the first response will be, I don't know if it's the same thing as in UNHCR cutting funding for all refugees in Indonesia. If that is the case, I just want to tell you that APEN is very much aware because we have staff in Yogyakarta. Our program officer last time was in Yogyakarta, also another staff communication officer, Ali Reza, who spoke here in September 25 somewhere. So we are very much aware of the funding cut by UNHCR. We are very concerned. Again, APEN don't have a lot of money. What our strength is mobilizing, coordinating, and informing this information to different organizations and telling them this is happening and can we share the responsibility. If I'm not mistaken, Lars has been, our program officer has been coordinating meeting with many other members of APEN in Indonesia, brainstorming how do we fundraise an emergency to hold this space for short term, and then how do we spend it more to other bigger organization and people who can give us more money from Australia and use it. We're looking. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are a lot of competing global human rights issues happening, and raising fund is really difficult. Just to let you know, we're aware, but then I also have to tell you that if I am cutting the fund, if it's a new thing, I am not aware. Please forgive me for that. So what we can do for the organization like GRS, SWACA, and then APRIN is that all the information that you have provided on the ground, it means we have the credential, the credible information from you. We then collect it, and then we have access to people of IUM. You have Indonesia IUM base. We can reach out to regional bureau. We can also reach out to IUM headquarter. Have a conversation about what is the reason why, if you're struggling with the funding, what is the alternative? Because from my personal opinion, and also from the perspective of APRIN, it is very irresponsible without having alternative solution. You just out of the blue one day wake up and tell the people that we are not going to support you anymore. Particularly in the countries where Convention 1951 is not signed, where the refugees are not allowed to work, where there is no alternative for refugees. If we just wake up one day and then tell them, look, next week onward, we're not giving you anything. And then what do we expect people to do? They need to eat. They have children. They have women that they are supporting and all of that. So I think the practical thing that we can do is that we are connecting all the dot U from the ground, feeding in the information to GRS, SWACA, and APRIN, and then we then reach out to different IUM branch from Indonesia based, regional bureau, and headquarter, have the conversation and find out the real reason why they are cutting down. Do they have alternative reason? They cannot just simply irresponsibly cut and leave people in limbo. They have to have a bit of transition. If they are funding cut, if they cannot do that, what is the transition? What is the role of organization like us? What is the role of IUM, etc.? So I would just encourage you. I know it is very stressful and concerning because you all are there in a very hopeless situation, but please stay in touch. I have put there my email address and WhatsApp. Also, you have there GRS and SWACA in the same country. Please keep us informed, and I cannot promise that we will change the world tomorrow, but I do promise that we will coordinate, mobilize, facilitate, communicate with the responsible entities, always making noise that, hey, look, there are people dying, there are people needing money, there are people needing support. You cannot just leave like, no, we're cutting out. We don't care. They can't do that. We can hold them accountable. I hope I've answered your question. Also, there are a lot of questions on resettlement, and I will leave it to UNHCR person to answer because APRIN does not do resettlement. But what APRIN did do in the past is that if we need to advocate for particular sensitive cases, we do know that there is a human rights violation happening, we advocate for those people. We try to link because APRIN has 300 members, not 30, 300 members in 30 countries in Asia Pacific region. So we have our hand and leg. So we reach out to different people, connect them, look, can we do this? Can you do this? So we did that in the past, but we are not in the position to tell the people how many people will get resettled or why people get early registration. It is the job of UNHCR. They can describe you more.
Hafsar, thank you very much. And thank you also for sharing your contacts. I believe some colleagues and participants here, refugee advocates from different community, if you would like to engage further with APRIN and maybe to raise something that Hafsar already mentioned in regards to coordination, facilitation, and others, feel free to contact her as well. And you can also contact SWACA further if you would like to have like a joint collaboration together and see about the potential work that can be done together. Hafsar, thank you very much for attending the session. Feel free to stay if you... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Answer one question. There is one direct message to me from Osman. Please, Osman Ghani, please message me and email me your concern. I'll reach out.
Okay.
If I can be excused, I will very much like to go and rest a little bit and have to wake up tomorrow morning early. And I will have to keep my voice because I'm speaking 2 other events tomorrow. So I need to save my voice. And thank you so much, everyone, for having me.
Thank you so much, Hafsar, and please do take some rest. As you said that you're representing 300 organizations, so a lot of people probably need as well the coordination from you. Thank you for attending this event.
Thank
And
you.
then, yeah. And then I will move to the next speaker. Without further ado, for the second speaker, we have Miss Nino Fiartasiwi. Mbak Nino, are you here?
Yeah.
Mbak Nino, thank you so much for attending the event. I'll introduce her a little bit. For those of you who haven't met or known her, she's an academic activist in human rights issue and international relation. She's affiliated mainly with the International Relations Study Program at the President University as assistant professor. She's also affiliated with the Resilience Development Initiative, for those of you known probably from the short name of RDI, as a senior fellow researcher and Urban Refugee Research Group, or UREF, or UREF, as a co-founder and senior researcher. Her current research interest now is on the forced migration, conflict study, transnationalism, as well as on the diplomacy. And from the academic perspective, which I know she's been engaging a lot with the activists, humanitarian organization, as well as with the refugee-led organization, she will be addressing some issues on the national level situations. Now, for those of you who are aware, we just have our new government, also about the refugee management, political situations, upcoming priority issues from the national advocacy perspective, as well as potentially some challenges on the advocacy work. I think it's very important to explore on the challenges as well as the academic perspective in terms of the refugee management with a different context. So the floor is yours, Mbak Nino, and thank you for attending this event and having us all. Over to you for 20 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Gading, and thank you everyone for having me today. Actually, I was enjoying Hafsar speech, and I think like there are many actually same ideas. And before I start my small ideas, I would like to apologize first because there are many, most of the attendants today, participants today, are friends from refugee communities, and if what I will be talking after this is seemingly not really related with your current situation or your current problems, I would like to apologize first. Let me share something. This is from the perspective of my point of view as an activist academic. I mean, I'm a scholar activist, so I'm much more on the academic side of things. Yeah, just to give you some perspective of what is actually happening. Let me share my screen. Yeah. So again, I will be talking about refugee advocacy, what we do, and probably some good practice that has been there, and some ideas probably, and about the challenges that we face as refugee friends in Indonesia. Yeah. And the outline of this presentation, I will talk more about Indonesian public perception, but you are already very familiar with that, and the situation updates on refugee management and advocacy in Indonesia later. And we will also talk about upcoming priority issues for national-based advocacy and challenges on conducting refugee rights advocacy in Indonesia. So basically, Indonesian public perception on refugees, they don't really know. At least this is from RDI UREF, my organization survey, that was conducted in Bogor City, Bogor Regency, and Pekanbaru City, cities with refugees communities. Yeah. And one key findings is that the general public is unaware of the global refugee crisis. They don't really understand about the situation of foreign refugees in Indonesia or even in their cities, like people in Bogor. They just sometimes see, yeah, refugees, but they can have a misconception about what is this refugees. And also people in Pekanbaru, they don't really understand, especially those probably outside the city of Pekanbaru. Yeah. So, but the situation was changed. So I took this from the Google Trend. From December from the 1st of December 2020. So I took it from the 1st of January 2021 until today. I took this trend. There was a different trend when people started to get interested about refugees, especially because of the boat arrivals in Aceh, yeah, and it was culminated in October until December 2023 last year until March, yeah. And from this we can see that the interest toward refugee is still on the what is refugees, and there are many interests about Rohingya refugees in 2023, meaning there is some situation that we are all here familiar with that, yeah, with the very heated situation last year that is so disheartening actually. And one of the biggest probably news outlet in Indonesia conducting a research about perception to refugee in Indonesia in the digital space and using social media as the data. And there are many people who are engaging with the Rohingya topic on social media between September, October, and November, December last year, yeah, 2023. As you know, there are many situations that is unpleasant to us all here. And there are 1 million mentions about Rohingya at that time. So people started to get interested about what is Rohingya, but probably they are also at the same time started to talk about refugees. As we know, there are also situations that happen in Sidoarjo because of the this Rohingya discourse about Rohingya situation in the national level. Yeah, and in that digital space or social media, the words that is used is they started to talk about refugees in Indonesia, Rohingya friends, Rohingya people, and they have these words that they use frequently. This is the data from Narasi TV, yeah. So let's talk about what is the situation update now, the current situation now. As you know that Indonesia just had an election last few months, and also another election for local leaders, yeah, governors, and also mayors, and also regions. And this, of course, bring a new situation, unpredictable situation for the Indonesia refugee management. New government, Indonesia have new cabinet, and there are also change in the task division of all ministries in Indonesia. There are formation of new ministries, at least ministries that are related to the refugee issue in Indonesia. Indonesia now have Ministry of Human Rights and Ministry of Immigration and Correction. And we know that usually refugee will be put under the Immigration Directorate General that was previously under the Ministry of Law and Human Rights, and now they become the 3 different ministries. And changes in nomenclature in all ministries, meaning nomenclatures mean right and responsibility. So we have now in the situation in terms of, or in the sense of refugee management in Indonesia, we don't have yet any clear perspective or any clear plan about what to do with refugees. It is not yet clear which stakeholders have authority over refugee management. Previously, it was coordinated by Refugee Task Force under the Coordinating Ministry for Political, Legal, and Security Affairs, but seemingly it will be put under another coordinating ministry, which is Coordinating Ministry of Law and Human Rights and Immigration and Corrections, and which precisely will taking care of refugee management in Indonesia is still very unclear until now. And also, the most important thing is Indonesia is a country in Southeast Asia, and Indonesia is also a country with a lot of ambition in the global politics. So there are changing in politics, in the domestic politics is also changing in regional politics and also global politics. As probably some of you are aware, that just 2 days ago, Syrian regime Bashar al-Assad was fall as well, and there are many situation changes there in Syria. Will that also means that repatriation for Syrian refugees open, like Syrian refugees elsewhere will be able to repatriate back to Syria, and because of Syrian refugees repatriated back, then the resettlement, for example, for other refugees from other countries is open. This is something that we also have not yet seen or probably can put we still have to observe before we can see what actually we can do. However, in Indonesia, there are also management and advocacy work. Let me check. Yeah. So advocacy work that has been done. As I mentioned before, I'm much more like an academic, so my work is probably doesn't really directly affect you. In this kind of country, for example, before a government making a policy, they need something what they call as research-based policy. So before they creating a policy, they need some research to support that policy. And this is what actually people like me doing. Like we try to have this academic research to support the policy. Hopefully, with all that we do, the government will take something that is confirming or protecting the refugee rights better. And not only doing that, we also actually doing consultation with relevant ministries and government bodies. Hopefully they will listen to us about the situation of refugees in Indonesia, because not many government officials actually understand the situation of refugees in Indonesia. And about the advocacy work, also, I would like to extend my gratitude to SWACA or GRS or other refugee organization, MPLACE, for example, to raising this public awareness and conducting refugee empowerment program. And this is a very important thing. And as I provide information before 2023, Indonesian general public didn't really understand about refugee. They didn't really know that refugees are here in Indonesia. When we talk about refugee, and in Bahasa Indonesia, it is translated as pengungsi, what they have in mind or what they had in mind is IDPs, internally displaced person, or pengungsi from, for example, natural hazard and things like that, yeah, but not foreign refugees or pengungsi luar negeri, like many of our friends here. So raising awareness, public awareness is very important, because again, we didn't want people who doesn't know about the situation making a decision to us, right? So public awareness, this is what many organizations actually do. And also the refugee empowerment program, like probably very, very small initiative, but I would like to also acknowledge organization like SMART, or probably some short RDI UREF and MPLACE or the Archipelago who put outlet, yeah. And also I would like to say like public awareness is something that important, and it's something about building the understanding and also putting our existence in the heart and the mind of the public. So for example, for students, for example, my capacity is just a lecturer in a university. So sometimes I bring my students to visit a refugee organization with the hope that they will listen, and they will not only listen from me, but also listen from others about the situation of refugee in Indonesia. Hopefully, these young people will be one of our champions in raising public awareness in the society. And I would like to share this, the upcoming priority of issues for national-based advocacy is that now we are in the situation of the discourse about the needs to revise the national refugee management. However, this is not coming without risk, because there are many things that can be out of our hands if we don't guide these ideas about revising the national refugee management. I'm speaking here about management. If we put more attention to what the word management, then we forget the word protection. I would like to suggest that it's the national refugee protection instead of national refugee management. And the upcoming priority issues for national-based policy is to broaden the protection meaning. Protection doesn't always mean like helping, putting refugee communities and people, refugee friends in the passive as a passive subject, but more in the active subject. So protection should mean also on the empowerment and strategic solution, what we can do. And fulfillment of the basic rights for refugees, I'm very much agree with what Hafsar has said about the rights to work, rights to education, and rights to healthcare system. This is three basic rights according to human rights. So right to work, right to education, rights to healthcare system. We have done a lot of actually studies about this. But what we need, Indonesians, academics like me, needs is just to push this study as a base of policy making for our country to protect more on refugees, to provide protection to refugees. Actually, that's what we have to do. And the regional mechanism for refugee protection in ASEAN. Hafsar has said that ASEAN is ASEAN. ASEAN doing what ASEAN do. Yeah, there are many speech talk in ASEAN, but there are not many what can we say successful story from that speech. Yeah, including probably for the case of Myanmar is the implementation of the 5-point consensus that ASEAN has set. So Hafsar already said that resettlement is not the solution. One of the solution is repatriation, but this repatriation meaning solving the root of the problem. So the 5-point consensus of ASEAN is something that actually ASEAN has come up, and it was meant to solve the root of the problem in Myanmar, violence. So ASEAN should do that more. Or probably other body of ASEAN like ICHAR talking more about human rights, because up until now, as much as I can understand, ASEAN intergovernmental collaboration about human rights doesn't talk much about refugees, or they don't talk about refugees, especially refugees in Myanmar. Sorry, I need to charge my laptop. So because they always claim that this is a domestic politics, things like that. We have to change that, and we have to be able to advocate for that. Our Bali Process Forum that was chaired by Indonesia and Australia, co-chaired Indonesia and Australia, this regional mechanism. However, there are also challenges in conducting refugee right advocacy that from a lot of studies and also my observation and listening to the people, and also my experience in conducting advocacy, that we need to clarify. And these challenges we need to address. First is about revision to presidential regulations. As I mentioned before, this revision idea is there. However, we have to think about, is it revision? Will this revision beneficial or put more harm to the refugee community? This is something that we have to ponder more. And about government commitment to refugee protection, and we talk about here is political will as well as the readiness of the general public to accept the idea of protecting refugees. As I mentioned before, actually the general public, they don't really understand about refugee situation in Indonesia. And unfortunately, before we can give them, before we can paint a neutral or positive view about refugees in Indonesia, we had this election that used refugee Rohingya arrival in Aceh last year as a political instrument, yeah, for building the political narration. Unfortunately, yeah. General public perception to refugees in Indonesia. One of the findings from my survey back in 2022 was actually for the Indonesian community. They don't really, in the first time, they don't really, they are very, they don't really antagonistic or negative toward refugees, especially after they heard about the situation, about why refugee running from their homes. However, they also find it difficult to engage with the refugee community because many refugees refuse, for example, the very small, simple example is to speak in Bahasa Indonesia. And Indonesians don't speak English very well. And they think when they speak English, probably is something that is so serious. So this is also a burden, yeah. So and we can also find that limited national CSO or CSO or NGOs, yeah, civil society organization working on refugee issue. I can just use my fingers from both hands to count how many actually CSOs there, both in the national level and in the local level. Maybe more in the local level, but in the national level, it's very, very, very few. And again, refugee communities, low social integration. If you engage only with refugee communities, friends, I would like to pledge more now for you to engage more with Indonesian community, because this is the key actually. Once they understand your situation, once they befriend you, probably your situation in general public, yeah, will be more positive. And there is also low engagement between refugee-led organization with the national CSO. This is very a situation that is quite critical, and this is something that should be tackled soon. The low engagement between refugee-led organizations with national CSO and lack of interdisciplinary study on refugees issue. This is me and my fellow academics probably that have to close this gap, because when we do research, actually sometimes we only do the partial, very small issue, or we only do it in our field of study. We forgot about the interdisciplinary study on refugee issue, and it's limiting the creative solution. So I think this is something. Again, for friends from a refugee community, is if this presentation or if what I speak is not something, what I talk now is not something that you can relate much, I'm so sorry. I think there will be some fellow Indonesians here. Yeah, I'm so sorry for this. Yeah, I would like probably to share about low engagement with the refugee-led organization. Many of you are leaders in your organization, so you have to engage more, I guess, because I would say that the community of practice or the nurture, yeah, the mentor-mentees relations is very important to nurture refugee communities, especially the refugee-led organization. I will conclude that collaboration among CSOs, refugee communities, and relevant agencies, whatever relevant agencies it is important, including in Indonesia. For example, when in 2022, yeah, I went to Pekanbaru and I saw that actually at that time, I haven't yet heard about the current situation. But at that time, the local government officials, local government officials were quite neutral about refugees. They are not very welcoming, but we are not very warm, but they didn't antagonistic. They didn't act antagonistic to the refugee communities, which is already a score, I guess, in when we talk about refugee situation in Indonesia. So collaboration among CSOs, refugee communities, and relevant agencies like local government. And for fellow academicians, more strategic studies for research-based policy making with interdisciplinary approach. And involving more society's instrument for raising public awareness, like students. And for friends from refugee community, is you are fluent or you are eloquent to explain, just like Hafsar, we have Hafsar as the role model probably. You can actually engage with, there are some academics working in refugee issue. You can probably being invited as guest speaker in one session and open more to the people. So these more common people, young people, are our key, actually, our instrument for raising public awareness to refugee situation. And positive social media campaign. I know that many refugees are also young people. They love to do TikToks and everything like social media. But knowing the situations that we need to find a positive view, probably be more aware about that is also important. Yeah, something that is probably the situation calls for that. Yeah, and community of practice to nurture new CSO for refugee protection and broadening the protection definition. This is very long strategy, I know. And what you have now is immediate problem solution. Yeah. And refugee-led organization as the driving force for refugee communities. I really take this as a very, very good lesson. Yeah, very good best practice from Indonesia refugee communities. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Mbak Nino, for the presentations. You keep mentioning how it might not be relevant to our fellow refugees, might not be easy to relate, and that's already something that we need to reflect upon 2025. Because so many issues that we see on the ground, such as our colleagues or our friends in Medan and Pekanbaru mentioned about the budget cut. Well, they don't mention about the budget cut. They mention directly on the impact we're losing for our assistance on the ground. And that is because of the policies of the either from Indonesia policy who don't actually, because from policy, it will create allocation of budget. And the allocation of budget is the one that goes to health services, access to work and shelter and so on and so forth. And the same probably applies with the international organization who also rely on the policy of what Hafsar mentioned about the situation in the global north. So what happens in Geneva will directly have impacts on what happens with the country office in Indonesia, for instance. So, and this is why I think it's a very strong reflection, that's my comments, that how we can collaborate better in the future to make sure that people are informed and people can also influence what happens on the top. So the impact will be at least anticipated and people can be participated in the decision-making process. So thank you for that, Mbak Nino, at least for sharing on the updates of the national context. Just for your information, parallel to this event, the National Commission of Women in Indonesia, Human Rights National Commission on Women is currently having a session on sharing their findings about the refugees women particularly, but in general about their study, where several Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Task Force is speaking. And we're hearing, now I'm also checking my WhatsApp, that the National Task Force is no longer get their own funding in the next year. So that's also something that is more and more challenging in Indonesia context. Even they don't have funding for refugee, they only have funding for themselves to have a meeting, and they already cut it off. So you can imagine how 2025 is going to look like. Okay, I will move, because Mbak Nino is gonna be here, so I will move to the third speaker right away. And there will be also two quick responder from the refugee community. The first one, we will have Sister Fatima from Afghanistan, and also Pak Masud, who is based in Medan. He's a Bangladeshi who's been seeking asylum in Indonesia for a while as well, and have a Rohingya family with him. But the third speaker we will have from UNHCR, Hyun Yong Chai. Hyun, are you here? Just wondering if you're here. I haven't said hi before.
Hello.
Okay.
Hope
Hello.
you can hear me well.
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you for attending this event. Hyun, allow me to introduce you quick. Hyun is a protection officer at UNHCR Indonesia. And prior to joining UNHCR Indonesia, Hyun has several experience on refugee protection issue, working on several units within UNHCR. Several questions has been addressed to you as always with this forum, and some might actually addressing directly to not only UNHCR Indonesia, but probably also UNHCR regional and global as well has been raised before. But we will hear from Hyun on the evaluations, update, and advocacy efforts on the ground and challenges on refugee management in Indonesia, and probably something that UNHCR has been doing in 2024. And what is look like in 2025 from UNHCR perspective, especially with the several issues that has been raised on the chat box from the refugee community as well as the role of international organization, particularly on the refugee rights protection. And if I may add, in the context in Indonesia, where we are not signatory. I know UNHCR has been receiving a lot of hate narrative campaign as well, and also there's several issues as well in regards to the funding. So that might be something we can raise and how we can do that better in looking at the 2025 situation. Hyun, over to you for 20 minutes.
Sure. Can you see the screen, hopefully?
I think it's incoming. Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me start PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully my voice is quite clear.
Yeah, it's loud and clear.
Okay. So my presentation today is quite general. By the way, I'm Hyun Young. As introduced, I work in UNHCR in Jakarta office. I work mainly with colleagues in the registration and refugee status determination. And we also work on how we want to communicate with the refugee communities, including like online platforms and etc. I'll try to answer some of the questions that might have raised already or flagged. I may not be able to answer on behalf of IOM about the funding related to IOM, but then I'll see if I can maybe answer some of those. But I may not be able to answer to all the questions that are being raised. Please kindly understand if my answer is not 100% in line with what you are hoping. Okay. And again, thank you for this great empowerment webinar. And also for the participants for waiting. I'm trying to move to the next slide. Somehow it's not moving. Okay, I'm gonna be very brief because we've already covered like the regional and also national policy and related. And then we often talk about the Refugee Convention, that Indonesia hasn't ratified the Refugee Convention, which is one of the key global or from UNHCR perspective, it's the most important international instrument about the refugee protection. However, there are other international human rights instruments that Indonesia has already ratified, as I put here. I'm not going to go into one by one. I just wanted to elaborate that basic human rights as elaborated and enshrined in most of those international instruments are actually applicable to any human beings in Indonesian territory. Therefore, it should also apply to refugees or any other migrants who are here. But of course, it depends sometimes that some might have actually a reservation, for instance, or there might be interpreting issues, how they want to actually interpret it. And then maybe there might be a requirement for further domestic implementation and national laws and etc. However, just generally, it has to apply to every human beings in Indonesia. And of course, there's a legal framework. Again, Indonesia doesn't have to sign the Refugee Convention, actually, to be able to protect refugees and asylum seekers or other stateless persons in Indonesia, because there are other legal framework that they can establish at the national level, which is actually the case in many other countries where they may not have signed the Refugee Convention, but then they do have their national legal framework and they have their own procedures and policy in place. So for instance, in Indonesia, there is this constitution which actually enshrined the right to seek asylum. And then there are many other domestic laws in relation to human rights or international relations about asylum, the right to seek asylum. We probably are most familiar to the presidential regulation of 2016, which is about handling of refugees. And then it is currently being revised by or under discussion for further amendment or revision by the Coordinating Ministry for Political and Security Affairs. And then we are hoping that maybe the revision is actually not a challenge, but an opportunity, which I will probably elaborate a bit more later, for further favorable protection environment, noting some of the ongoing changes here, including the scope of this presidential regulation, whether it applies to all domestic refugee situation or whether it's just only those who are in emergency disembarkation and the ships in distress. And of course, immigration is currently having a non-detention approach, although we note that there have been some increasing concerns being raised by the refugee communities about the increasing rates and increasing surveillance and also arrest and detention for either not yet registered with UNHCR, although they wish to register, or not having a valid ID document, or for different reasons. We understand that the immigration recently announced an internal circular to enhance the monitoring and surveillance of refugees in Indonesia. So we are closely monitoring it, and then we will also enhance our protection activities, of course, in close coordination with our partners, especially legal aid partners. Just to show you just an overview of the population, which is, again, just the situation update. So as of end of October 2024, total population registered and active in our database, in UNHCR database, is 11,874 individuals, or 6,604 cases. And then, as you can see, while majority of them are in Jakarta and surrounding area, as we see today, we have many participants from Medan, for instance, Pekanbaru or elsewhere. We have a population which is very, very scattered into different provinces and cities. And then Indonesia, as you know, has 17,000 plus islands. So we have many other refugees who are in a very remote locations where there is no like IOM or UNHCR presence. So that's always one of the key challenges for us, to actually ensure that nobody is actually left behind, nobody is, like neglected, basically. Of those who are registered and active in our database, about 40% are in IOM accommodations, and then 42% are living independent, and then about 10% are in temporary sites or camps, however you call it, in Aceh or North Sumatra. In Pekanbaru, as you can see, the population has increased quite rapidly in a recent month, actually, which is very unusual. And it might also be related to the IOM assistance program that they initially started. And then IOM now, I understand, is a bit financially stretched, and then there might be a donor requirement that they may not be able to assist recent arrivals, for instance, which was actually the case for other non-Myanmar refugees, actually. So I'm not representing IOM, or I'm not providing any answer on behalf of IOM, but that's just why we understand that there has been quite a huge increase in Pekanbaru from Aceh and North Sumatra. Okay. The population is basically mostly adults, about 68% are adults and 30% are children of age between 0 and 17-year-olds. The other population is mostly or majority adults are males, and then Indonesia has quite a large population of males. Again, we have higher number of refugee population from Afghanistan, as it's been always for the past 10 years, I think. And then the Myanmar is recently quite increased. But then you also probably will note that this number is a bit different from, let's say, the pre-registration figures, meaning that those who we registered like formally after the initial pre-registration, they depart in between the two steps that is being conducted by UNHCR. Then followed by Somalia, Yemen, Sudan, Iraq, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and other nationalities. We have about 52 nationalities seeking asylum in Indonesia. This year, until October 24, we registered 1,566 individuals, or 764 cases or families. This is about Rohingya refugee population in Indonesia. As you note that here, we have Rohingya refugees recorded as 2,658, which is a little less than 500 higher, right? Or 458 higher than the ones that we actually saw in earlier slide. So it means that this is a pre-registration figure, meaning those who are pre-registered with us, many of them actually departed, or the location is unknown, but then we cannot yet update their location to, let's say, Malaysia or something. So the location is unknown, so we kind of consider them as still in Indonesia until we can finally close the case, or until the location is known. So there is a bit of a discrepancy here. And then, as you know, that there are many informal hosting sites of those Rohingya refugees in Indonesia. Some are in Nayum accommodation and some are living independently. We had a very high number of boat arrivals in 2023. As you can see in the chart, like it's actually very unprecedented. If you compare it from the previous year's average, it's almost 8 to 9 folds. It's more than the previous boat arrivals. And then this year, we haven't seen as many as last year, but then we still continue to see boat arrivals even very recently. This was a bit of a population statistics, and then I just wanted to give a bit of an elaboration. As one of the questions that I got actually from Suaka is to talk about the current situation or challenges in 2024 or earlier. Let me address it in a way that maybe let me first briefly summarize the key protection activities that UNHCR is doing. And then I will continue with some of those major challenges related to this. As you probably are all familiar to, UNHCR conducts registration and issue UNHCR ID card, or UCL, what we call UCL, on behalf of the government, because the government doesn't take any registration or case processing activities in Indonesia. Therefore, it is within our responsibility to support the government as per our mandate. And then we also conduct refugee status determination. In Indonesia, I understand one of the questions from the chat was about remaining an asylum seeker. So in Indonesia, UNHCR has a policy or procedures that we cannot process everyone's refugee status determination within a short time frame, because we simply don't have the staff to process. And then Indonesian government has no differentiation or distinction between the definition of asylum seekers or refugees. So as I might show in the next slide, in UNHCR ID card, there is no distinction if somebody is asylum seeker or refugee, and then there is no distinction or difference in our program. So if there is a financial assistance program, everyone gets the same opportunity and assessment opportunities. Therefore, there's no difference. So our RSD, given the very limited staffing, and then the noting that there is no difference in between the two status, we prioritize those who really need the protection reasons, and then those who might actually really need RSD or refugee status for solutions. Mainly, some of the private sponsorship programs require refugee status, especially, for instance, Group of 5 program in Canada. But then the US Welcome Corps program doesn't require refugee status, or the New Zealand private sponsorship program also doesn't require refugee status. So there are some that really requires RSD. So we actually prioritize those cases. So if somebody has active private sponsorship already submitted, then we actually prioritize those cases for scheduling or other protection concern cases that we might really need a refugee status. We do child protection and then the GVV interventions. So it's a protection case management. So we have what we call SILCA, semi-independent living care arrangement for the UACs. And also we conduct best interest assessment and best interest determination, and there will be a panel that is involved in. And then there will be a decision made on behalf of the child as necessary. And UNHCR also conducts GVV prevention, and then we've been engaging in the communities for EMAP, especially for the males, to raise awareness about the prevention of GVV. This is also related to many challenges in a way that many refugees face, psychosocial counseling or like psychosocial distress, and then issues because of the protracted situation, and also that they are not able to formally work in Indonesia. Therefore, often it might be leading to, unfortunately, some domestic violence and GVV and other protection issues. Therefore, we really want to prevent those, of course, in close partnership with our partners and the refugee communities. UNHCR has been still operating the legal protection line, and we do provide the legal support with our partner like SUACA, for instance, or other legal aid partners for case intervention, including those at the airport or those who just arrived and they wanted to seek asylum, but then are not allowed to enter or not able to access UNHCR. Then we might actually urgently intervene. And also any cases of arrest and detention, we will actually visit the detention for release and advocate. UNHCR's financial assistance or health program is actually jointly together with our partners. We actually provide a very, very limited financial assistance, unfortunately. And I understand it was earlier mentioned some of the questions about the financial cost, which we are still trying to identify available funding. It's very unfortunate. It was very, very difficult for us to actually decide it. But then at the time, we simply didn't have any money whatsoever that we can actually implement or disperse. That was a very, very simple reason. If we have money, we would have actually distributed. So we are still trying to identify funding, and it is one of our key priority. And health intervention is one of those that still have a limitation. Is one of the key challenges that many refugees raise during our counseling or verification exercise, interviews, and etc. Because we have a health hotline managed by YCWS, but then we cannot address to all the interventions. Therefore, we are focusing on some of the key health issues, urgent and emergency issues, and then we are not able to address all the chronic illness issues, which is very unfortunate. So this is another area of advocacy and challenges that for us, we always want to include refugees in the national health system and national health insurance system, so that they're not excluded or not getting anything above or below what the citizens of Indonesia will get. The economic empowerment is one of the key advocacy for us, as noted, that refugees in Indonesia are not allowed to work legally. However, the circular from the Ministry of Manpower allows actually to use the vocational training center run by the government for the training of refugees, although I don't think it is very well implemented or known. Therefore, one of the pledges was actually to include refugees for the vocational training, and then some kind of not income generation. We cannot say officially it's an income generation, but some kind of vocational training and opportunities like apprenticeship or internship, which actually was one of those pledges that was made by the Indonesian government in the previous two Global Refugee Forum. And the first one in 2019, and then the second last year in 2023. So this is one of the key areas that we are closely following up with our partners, including the Government Research Institute and SWACA and JRS and all these other partners for advocacy. Education, again, this is another area. Many refugee children cannot attend a formal school. Our statistics indicate that about 770 or 90 students are currently attending a formal school in Indonesia. Noting that the total children population is quite a small number, there are many challenges, including that many don't really want to actually learn Bahasa because it's a requirement for the children to enter a public school in Indonesia. However, again, noting that the challenges and also the lack of formal certificate being issued by the school, it is one of the crucial areas for everyone to attend, and then it will benefit for them either their resettlement or other pathway to a third country or other solutions. Therefore, we continue to advocate for education inclusion, not only in the secondary or elementary level, but also higher upper level. I will deal with solutions a bit later, but then solution is not only limited to resettlement, which is a very traditional one of the permanent solutions. We now focus more on the complementary pathways, noting the limitation of resettlement, and also noting that not everyone will be resettled eventually. Indonesia is one of the few, very, very few countries globally that has a very high resettlement proportion compared to the population that we are protecting. Although many refugees, we of course fully acknowledge that it is a very challenging situation, but then we also have to again note that it is very, very unusually high. Globally, it's less than 1%. In Indonesia, those who are in the resettlement pipeline is more than 25%. Therefore, again, this is limiting in a way of further expanding it. Therefore, we try to also support refugees for other pathways, such as complementary pathways. And then if they wish to return voluntarily together with IOM, we actually provide counseling, and then IOM will assist for the return program. Just very briefly, as I noted earlier, that UNHCR document doesn't have any difference between refugees and asylum seekers. It's just the same document that we issue. The ID card is valid for 4 years. It used to be valid for 2 years, and now it's extended for 4 years, and the government have been also informed about it. And then it is valid for 6 months, the UCL. UNHCR had witnessed in some occasions a bit of a potential concern of fabricating, for instance, UCL or ID cards. So there are some security features that we actually enhance. Therefore, you cannot just simply copy and then print a new ID card or UCL. Briefly about the solution, which is one of the always a key challenges in Indonesia in particular, given the context and the geographic locations and the history of many refugees arriving in Indonesia, considering that it would have been a very short-term transit. The resettlement anticipation is very, very high. Although, as I know that there are many cases already in our RST pipeline, there are like more than 2,477 individuals who are currently pending decision by states. This is end of October statistics. There are 775 persons departed for resettlement this year only. And then 537 persons accepted this year by resettlement country, and they're waiting for the departure and arrangements. And also, I wish to again flag it that complementary pathway has been really increasing quite gradually. Even last year, we saw more than 300 departures on a private sponsorship. This year, we already see 257 individuals departed on private sponsorship to a third country. And then 45 persons departed on labor mobility, which is also assisted by our partners and also with Talent Beyond Boundaries, one of the NGOs in a third country, to actually link refugees with a potential employer in a third country. So this year we had seen 45 persons already departed, and then 1 departed on education pathway this year, and then 20 for family unification. We have a bit of an increase of voluntary repatriation where they're voluntarily returned to their country. It is 100% their own voluntary will, and then they have to really understand fully on the impact and the procedures. Seeing this, just wanted to flag it again that traditionally, again, resettlement was the only thing. Now we see more and more increase in complementary pathways, and many refugees are requesting for refugee status determination interview for the reason of private sponsorship, which is really, really good. However, I just wanted to reiterate that not all private sponsorship requires refugee status. Canada program requires refugee status currently. And then the US doesn't require refugee status, for instance. So just wanted to flag it that you don't always have to wait for the refugee status. You can get what we call a status confirmation letter from us and then submit for the sponsorship. And then labor mobility, we note that the pool is big. Therefore, if you compare the whole pool versus how many have been accepted, it seemed to be very small. But then again, having some skills can really help you for identifying a third country solution, plus your settlement after the third country solution. Some of the protection challenges I've already mentioned briefly before, so I will try to be brief. Access to territory, especially as it was mentioned, there was a huge misinformation, disinformation campaign against refugees in UNHCR last year. We have seen a bit of a decrease, but then we never know what might happen if there is a new, like influx or a new increase of boat arrivals. So access to territory has been challenging, even in Aceh. And also we see a limitation in access to asylum at the ports of other airports, for instance. This high level of resettlement expectation is a challenge. Also, it is related to the lack of legal right to work. Of course, we acknowledge it. So the second and the third points are somewhat related, but then it is making partners in UNHCR quite difficult for us to advocate for the domestic inclusion because they basically don't have a legal right to work. Smuggling and trafficking, as noted by Rohingya refugees in the chat, that there's a continuous risk of being exposed to not only smuggling network, but also like a human trafficking issues. And there have been an increase of reports on potential protection concerns or trafficking victims. And then UNHCR tries to work with relevant law enforcement, other agencies and partners to tackle this. However, this is one of the areas that our law enforcement is really limited. We are not a government agency that can actually enforce law, basically. So we really rely on our partners and the government for tackling of this. Ensuring the protection with resource limitation. Again, I've noted on some of the limitations earlier on financial and other limitations. We again try our best to identify any available resources. And then we hope that maybe we can, whenever we identify new resources, we can inform, which includes financial assistance and hopefully maybe a bit more health, including possible discussion on national health and insurance inclusion. But then the advocacy has been quite challenging. At the same time, there are some opportunities, if I may. Just a flip side is that the planned revision of the presidential decree might actually address some of the gaps in the current law and regulations. And hopefully the new leadership, which is also a leader in the region in many ways, might also expand the humanitarian leadership And also from the UNCT level, there is a UN country team, and then the UN country team has a joint common pledge at the Global Refugee Forum last year in areas such as education, health, and self-reliance and birth registration. So we have been trying to ensure that newborn babies in Indonesia have access to birth registration, birth certificate issued by the Civil Registry Office, which is different from the hospital, so that their actual birth is actually publicly recorded, and then they can actually bring into a third country when they identify a solution, and then they continue have some kind of ID documents. We have been trying to enhance our engagement with refugees and LLOs. For instance, we launched a digital gateway self-service portal in May last year, and we actually visited all IOM accommodations nationwide, everywhere. We visited all IOM accommodations. We may not have been able to interview everyone if they refused to meet with us, or if they were not available at the time. But then as of 29th of November, we actually supported creating of this digital gateway account for 4,249 individuals. And then through the digital gateway portal, refugees can actually check their key personal information. And then they can actually update their contact. They don't have to contact UNHCR to update their change of address, change of phone numbers, for instance, or WhatsApp. And then we are adding more functionality. For instance, now refugees can request for registration of the newborn child in the family through the portal. And then very soon we are hoping that maybe we can send like a messages to refugees using the portal. We hope that we can also use the portal for instance, some scheduling of, let's say, case interviews or counseling and etc. We also are hoping that refugees can have more detailed message about the resettlement case status, because currently the portal offers a very minimum information about the status of their resettlement case processing. So just to recap, as of end of November, we met about 7,300 individuals. We are still continuing the verification exercise in Bogor. With thanks to JRS, we are using the JRS Bogor office for the verification exercise, and we've been meeting refugees for in-person verification plus account creation, and then support for any other case updates and counseling as necessary. And again, I have been talking mainly about UNHCR activity, and also challenges, but then again, repeatedly, we rely on the partners in many areas, and then we rely on the government of Indonesia. Therefore, in our way forward in 2025 and beyond, one of the key will be how to actually engage the government in more on our, for instance, registration or pre-screening or the data collection process, so the government is more aware of it and then actually are willing to be more involved in, not just about surveillancing, and also hopefully to positively engage with the government for the decree and any other policy level amendments, so that they actually try to really lead the region in many areas of refugee protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hyun. Sorry, I think there might be some technical error where the participant accidentally probably put some scratch on the presentation. So if Swaka colleagues can help me later, because we still have 2 responders. I wouldn't open the question and answer yet at the moment. So if that's okay, we will have 2 responders from the refugee community. But thank you for raising a point that probably connects us all relating to the presidential regulations amendments, which we never know whether it's going to head towards a good direction or worse. As well as the challenges relating the financials, the fund stretch that's probably linked to us all on this regards, and addressing some of the questions on the chat box. Now, without further ado, we have 2 responders from the refugee community. The first one is Sister Fatima Hawari. I wonder if you are here. So maybe we can make it like quickly 5 minutes for each responder. So hopefully we can try to be on time to finish this and to conclude it by 4:15. Otherwise, then I probably have to stretch it maybe in 15 minutes extra. Sister Fatima, are you here? Sister Fatima Khawari is from Afghanistan, and she's been living in Indonesia as refugee since 2018, December. And she's been a volunteer teacher and volunteer interpreter, as well as the refugee representative. Sister Fatima, are you on the call? I think you are. I see your name, huh? I can now. Money is, the internet is very poor. Okay. All right. Oh, I put message earlier. Okay. Thank you, Sister Fatima. Then I will hand it over to Brother Masud. He's a Bangladeshi who arrived in Indonesia in 2015, seeking a better life, but facing a perilous journey when a fishing boat carrying him to Malaysia broke down, leaving him adrift at sea. Rescued by Indonesian fishermen, he found refuge in Indonesia, where he built a family with his wife, a Rohingya woman, and their 3 children. Despite the challenges of being a refugee, Masud has dedicated himself to giving back to the community by collaborating with organizations such as UNHCR, IOM, Suaka. As Rohingya representative and spokesperson in Medan, he advocates for the rights of his community. So, Pak Masud, are you here on the call? I believe you
Yes,
are.
I'm here,
I'm here.
Mr. Garding. Thank you very much for giving me the
Okay.
opportunity to speak about my community in Indonesia. And thank you very much, UNHCR and from other organization who just participated now. And thank you very much all of the refugees who are joining and hearing us from 2 p.m. now. So I am Muhammad Masud. I am a Bangladeshi, but I am working as a volunteer.
Sorry, Pak
For
Masud,
Rohingya-
do you have a presentation to share? I believe I got
Yeah.
information from Pak Angga
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
Right?
I have. I will. I'm sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, please share.
There we go. Okay, 5 minutes is yours. Over to you, Pak Masud.
Okay. Thank you for the time. So I'm going to tell UNHCR and all of the organization currently holding on this meeting about IOM's withdrawal of support, a crisis for Rohingya refugee, a plea for continued humanitarian assistance. So yeah, this is like IOM withdrawal supports, like we already explained about that before beginning of the meeting. So the Rohingya crisis, what is the Rohingya crisis? Historical persecution, a brief history of the Rohingya people's persecution in Myanmar, that all we know. Mass exodus, the forced displacement of Rohingya refugees to neighboring countries, including Indonesia. The plight of Rohingya refugees in Indonesia, the challenges faced by Rohingya refugees in Indonesia, such as limited access to basic necessities, healthcare, and education. So, if I explain a lot about this, from Myanmar military and Myanmar Buddhist, our Rohingya people have been getting tortured from many years ago, and is still ongoing genocide in Myanmar. And that's why Rohingya refugees want to flee from their own country. And some from them arrived to Indonesia for getting their safe life, for getting the better future and getting the children's future. But IOM doesn't want to help them from their heart. Okay, next page. So what IOM really help to refugees? So IOM's role in supporting Rohingya refugees. provision of accommodation, distribution of allowances, access to essential services like healthcare and education. Okay, good. But now IUM withdraws all of the things what we just read, what we just explained from 2019 to 2024 registered people. The sudden withdrawal of support, loss of housing and shelter. That's we are talking from the beginning. Disruption of basic needs and survival. Increased vulnerability to exploration, trafficking, and other risks. So you know about our journey. This is the very, 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 very risky, and this is risky means it's not like a risky road accident or something. If is there anything happen in the sea, so directly dead. So this is very risky, and we hope if Indonesian government and Bangladesh government and Malaysian government work together, so they can stop to trafficking, human trafficking in the sea. But if they work together, yeah, next page. A plea for continued support. So we request to UNHCR Indonesia and SWACA Indonesia advocacy support, urging the Indonesian government to provide asylum and protection, negotiation with IUM, seeking assistance in negotiating with IUM for continued support, public awareness and international pressure, mobilizing public awareness and international pressure to compel IUM to reinstate support. So from our Rohingya community, from Medan, Pekanbaru, and from all over the Indonesia, we really request to SWACA Indonesia and UNHCR Indonesia, please, how you can please do push to IUM for not withdraw the support from Rohingya refugees who are getting supported from 2019. Like from 30 December of this month, from Medan, everyone will need to leave because IOM already warned them. They cannot pay for their room rent. They cannot pay for their accommodation. So they should leave from 30 December of this month. And in Pekanbaru, they already warned to the Rohingya refugees in Pekanbaru who got the accommodation in 2022 or 23. And IUM already stopped the electricity. IUM already stopped the water. So this is like only happen in the Palestine, if we don't know. If you can feel this is like Palestine, IUM is doing in Indonesia. Sometimes Israel cut the water, Israel cut the gas, Israel cut the electricity, you know. So IUM is a human being organization, and they are working for human who is suffering for their life, right? So why IUM do like that with refugees, Rohingya refugees in Indonesia? So please advocacy for this reason, and please help to Rohingya refugees who really suffering for this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Masud, for the response of the discussion today, as well as again raising the situations in Medan, Pekanbaru as well. I'm not sure if we have Sister Fatima here, but when she returns, then potentially we will get her chance to probably speak a little bit. But I will move to question and answer. I see a hand raised by Ayatullah, but before that we have, well, this is quite a long question from Pak Hasan Ratek, but I believe some of it might be already addressed. But if there is any speaker who would like to address some of it, I think we give the floor. Or maybe Pak Hasan Ratek, would you like to open your mic as well to potentially sum up some of this question, if that's okay with you? And then Pak Ayatullah will go next. I don't know if Pak Hasan, are you still here? Hello. You are? Okay, great. Do you mind to just simply read the questions, or maybe summarize it up and maybe choose the most, the priority of it? Over to you. Hasan.
Thank you so much for giving time. And thanks all the speakers and the hosts, JRS, Swaka, and the speakers. Yes, there are many questions. There were many questions, and now I have raised some of those questions because of the lack of the time or limited time. So I have just written some of few of them, and I asked. Some of the question was answered, but not properly. One of the question was about the RSD interview conducted. I have a research paper, and I have actually there were some Zoom meetings with Chimsa, and I just displayed there as well. It was said that because of the lack of staffs, UNHCR cannot conduct the RSD interview, but unfortunately, this is not true. And I have done some research from 2010 until now. The UNHCR staff is sometimes 5 to 6 people less or more in each year, but the budget was less than now in the past in 2010, 2012, 2013, 14. With those less budget and the same staff as now, they have conducted more than 3,000 RSD interviews in 1 year, in one single year. But now they have stopped around 3,000 people RSD interviews since October 2015 until now. For more than 9 years, they have stopped. But they say that because the government of Indonesia now there is no difference between the asylum seekers, and they are being recognized the same, asylum seeker and refugees. Therefore, there is no need of conducting an interview. And there is some contradiction between the questions that UNHCR is giving, that this cannot be logical. Now, if we just take a look to the staffs, that is the same from 2010 until now, and the budget was less than now. In 2012, 13, 14, more than 3,000 RSD was being conducted, RSD interviews have been conducted, but now it is not, they are not doing only 1,000 in 1 year. In 1,000 in 1 year, they cannot do that. In this year, you have seen that only 700 and some people have newly registered, but they cannot even, they have not conducted the 700 people RSD interview for those people. And also, the UNHCR is always encouraging the refugees to work here. I myself have gone and visited them as a refugee representative. Also, I met them many times. And also as a paralegal, I had many discussions with SWACA, and I'm in contact with SWACA and CRS, CWS, that now CRS is not there anymore. About this refugee who are working. But unfortunately, when they are being arrested by immigration, UNHCR cannot protect them. UNHCR cannot protect them. They have to pay tens of millions of rupees to be released. Last time, 5 of them have been released about a month ago. They paid 75 million. UNHCR do not know. They have. Yeah, they paid $75 million rupees to be released. But I don't know where is the UNHCR and SWACA and JRS, CRS, where are they and what are they doing? But they at the same time encourage the refugees to go and work. And they say that we are trying to, for the basic rights to work that Indonesia should. But at the same time, Indonesia is not willing to do that. And whenever UNHCR is trying to push the government to allow the refugees to work here, they show some reaction. They do something that's sending this message to the UNHCR and partners that we will not go. We
Okay.
will not do this thing. And also now,
Can we
And
keep
there are
it
some-
on those two
okay,
because of the time, huh?
Okay,
And the
okay.
rest, I let the speaker if they can use this forum as well to address, and the
Okay.
others, maybe you can address.
Just about in this Kalidaris, we are living in a building,
Sure.
ex-Kolim Kalidaris. We are living here. Now we were warned to leave this building, but again, we stayed here. We said that there's no alternative solution. We cannot go anywhere. We stayed here for 5 years. Now the Satpol PP has come here and they occupied the main building.
Right.
Mr. Enka has come here some days ago. But we haven't seen anything from UNHCR or any other partners. We do not know what will happen to these people. There is a woman, children, and pregnant woman here that may give birth this month or next month. But again, they are living in a stressful very situation, and they do not know what happens tomorrow, today. The Satpol PP will come and force them to leave the building. And there are the situation of the refugees. Please answer this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pak Azan. 3 questions relating on the RST. Is it really connected is it because of the staff or is it because of other things, and the relationship between post 2016 on the, I think in the past was about the refugee backlog on RST, and this is also the globally happening on the RST globally on UNHCR, and whether it's actually accurate and the fate of the people who got RST. And the second one is rights to work. What does it mean, the rights to work? Does it mean that it is actually allowed, and whether the organization is in position to should protect them when there is any condition with detention or with other protection concern on relating to access to work? And last but not least, the situation in Kalideres, which is apparently also happening in Jakarta, other than Medan and Pekanbaru, who got cut off from IOM. I think Kalideres now cut off from the local government because of the reconstruction I heard a few months ago. Okay, who's the next one? I couldn't find the name. Was it Pak Ayatullah? Pak Ayatullah, and then we can we can share the questions to the speakers. Pak Ayatullah, if you can keep it short. You open your mic and raise your hand before. Do you still want to ask questions? Otherwise,
yeah. Hello, everyone. I hope
Hello.
you can hear me.
Loud and
Actually, I'm
clear.
on the way. I'm on the way. Maybe there is like some loud noise of the vehicles. Anyway, I don't have that much to say. Thank you for giving me the opportunity
Okay,
to share
okay.
my point of view. The thing I wanted to say is that, like, GRS or UNHCR is not responsible for the monthly allowance or the other support for the refugees. I know, and I heard it. And yeah, but according to the situation now back in Pekanbaru, this situation is very dire. Like, there are women's and some people who cannot speak Bahasa and they can't communicate with the local communities. It's very tough for them, like, to find a room, or some like they can't afford the room and they can't even go to the hospital to take the treatment because they are unable to communicate. And if the women's are like allowed to, or they are told to vacate the accommodation, or if they have to leave from the accommodation, they will be like in a very difficult situation. Like, it will be too tough for them to find a room, or even if they can find the room, it will be tough to afford for them. They can't afford it because you are aware that, like, the monthly allowance is cut off, it's decreased. On the other hand, they are like told to vacate the like move from the accommodation. They can't afford the room, right? The rent room, it's expensive, and of course it's like weird. And actually, I am far from Pekanbaru. I was in Pekanbaru before. Now I live in Jakarta. Some of the women from Pekanbaru, they know me. Like, I was there, and somehow I can speak like I know some people and I can communicate a little bit better than them. So they think like Ayat, if you find anyone to share the situation about us, please share. Like we are unable to communicate and we are just like blind and lost in the sea. We don't know what to do or we can't communicate. We can't share our problems. So that's why I was just wondering, it will be too tough for the women, especially. There are women who are widows.
Okay.
They are like illiterate. They can't communicate. So, they are like just, reaching out to us and telling us about the problems, like the situation is like this. Please share with the peoples, And for now, I can just request to you that just all you can do is just advocate, help us by advocating for us, like help us to find out a solution for the refugees. Yeah, because you are not responsible for the allowance or the monies and the room. So all we want from you is please advocate for us and help us to find out a solution.
Thank you, Brother Ayatullah. I think this is the
Yeah.
main reason why Swaka conducted this event is rather than us advocate for you, how we can all advocate together for the situation in Indonesia in 2025. So
Yeah.
I believe from today's call, we learned quite a lot that most organizations working on refugees, including the refugee themselves, receiving hit in many fronts. The regional one, the national one, the local one, the community members. And I believe if you are representing the community, you might also have a lot of concern from the community. And last but not least are the community themselves who actually face this. And this is not only in Medan, Pekanbaru, also in Jakarta and other places. So I think in 2025, how we can actually document that better, working that better through participatory, because we now have Rohingya refugee who might have issues that they only themselves who knows, and we have the urban setting issues with the Afghani, Somali, Sudanese, and how we can document that better and see what kind of opportunity where we can hold hands together, at least to document and raise that through the limited human rights mechanism that has been shared by, I think Hyun shared about the human rights mechanism that Indonesia at least accede or maybe ratified in the past. But from those three questions, I will hand over to the speakers as well as probably their closing statement as well after they answer the questions. If they don't answer questions, then maybe just a closing statement, at least from Mbak Nino. But Hyun, I believe some questions might be raised, and if you maybe can respond to some of it, feel free to do so. Not to putting you on the spotlight, but
Would
over
you like
to
me
you.
go first or?
I think you go first if that's okay,
Ah,
and then Nino will sum it up later, and then yeah.
Sure, sure. I mean, some of the questions are a bit more like fact finding, right? So who is right? It's a bit of argumentative. I would always say, of course, it's never been truth and etc. But then there's going to be argument. So what I can say is that in terms of RSD, it is clear that we've been struggling with budget cut and staffing cut. It's never been the same now. And then we currently have only RSD staff too, who are also working on other works. So it's clearly a reduction, but then I don't want to be just arguing based on the staffing issues. There has been some other issues. For instance, let's say in 13, 14, and 15, we used to do a simplified registration plus RSD for instance, Afghan cases and some of the other cases. We were able to do a very simplified refugee status determination because at that time, the countries, like resettlement countries, Australia, for instance, would allow us to do so. And then we were able to submit cases. Even though it was a very short interview, there was no further RSDs. So it was a bit like a merge, so to speak. We cannot do that at the moment. So we have to then do full registration and full RSD. Even though previously they were doing this enhanced registration, what we call like a quite an intensive registration interview, we have to do a full RSD, which usually requires at least minimum half day for one individual, and then assessment, etc. So again, there have been many changes, not just above the government policies or our staffing, also procedure-wide. And I don't want to drag it too much. So there have been many other circumstances why we are again processing refugee status determination, but then our current policy is not based on the protection. For instance, when they arrived here, the refugee status determination focuses on key protection cases and then the solutions. Who have identified solutions, then we will actually provide the refugee status again, as I explained it. About the work right, as I mentioned earlier, we all know refugees in Indonesia don't have a legal right to work, and we cannot officially encourage refugees to work. However, what we are trying to do is to find a way in our advocacy with our partners, with the government, the refugee might be able to do some vocational training and some income generation activities. We cannot say it's a full right to work, but then allow them to engage in some meaningful activities so that they actually prepare for their future. And also currently they're engaging in skilled activities. That's the key. That's also why in our verification exercise, one of the key data set that we actually update is if they have any specific skills, if they have received any training or certificate. It can be arranged by IOM, it can be arranged by JRS, it can be even just interpreting trainings. We have been updating those so that we also try to identify those who might have the skills. And then if there's any program that we can offer, we might be able to do a matchmaking. And then of course, by encouraging them to be more involved in such activities, then it might help them to identify third country solutions, such as I mentioned, I think by one of the refugees speakers earlier, that refugees also sometimes are requested to be able to be a good support to the society after their resettlement or move to a third country through private sponsorship. Therefore, having these skills is not something that is completely wasted. We cannot say that it's a right to work, or we cannot say we encourage them to work. About legal intervention, of course, we will intervene. We have a legal hotline. And then as soon as we actually receive information about somebody's arrest, we usually try to go by in person. But sometimes, again, we only have 2 legal staff who can actually attend. So sometimes it's not possible for us to actually directly involve. Then we might do like a phone calls or engage with DGI and send letters and etc. Or we engage the communities and etc. So there can be other various ways, or we work with the partners. Again, we don't want refugees to be arrested for any reasons. And then that will be always our #1 advocacy. So no arrest, no arbitrary arrest, no detention of refugees, right? And then we will immediately intervene and whenever we know. In that regards, we collaborate with the community leaders, for instance, the OVs, or previously we called them RRs, now they're OVs, or any community leaders who actually inform us about the detention and arrest. We will intervene. Kalidare situation, I cannot comment exactly because I understand it's a UNHCR. It's not a UNHCR property. It's not a UNHCR run shelter. UNHCR doesn't have any shelter officially run by us. I understand it's a government building, and we cannot really intervene or stop the government. UNHCR has a policy that for all independent living refugees, we will have the same procedures. So if they need financial assistance or shelter, it will have to be through the same channel of communication, because refugees in Bogor or elsewhere, they might also be same vulnerable, and then they have to go through that same channel, often with our partners. So we cannot just prioritize one because there is some situation ongoing while it's a government building. So again, our procedure has to be equal to all independent living refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yun. And if there is any particular follow-up, I believe UNHCR have several mechanisms if you would like to follow up that clearly and maybe discuss further with Swaka and others if you would like to discuss that further. Because I believe back in 2014-13, I think during that simplified registration time, Swaka was also involved in that just to make sure to get a clear pictures in regards to RSD in Indonesia as well. So, and But I guess moving to Mbak Nino for the closing statement, because so many things are focusing on UNHCR and IOM as well, and that's usually the context where instead of responsibility sharing, it's responsibility shifting, especially in the country where they don't ratify. So the duty bearer, where the country or the government should be actually be responsible, because they are the duty bearer under the human rights perspective, it's being switched to conveniently being switched to UNHCR and IOM, who end up doing pretty much everything with a very limited budget. But yeah, over to you, Mbak Nino. If you have any closing statement, and maybe you would like to address
Excuse me, I put a message in the chat box that I'm available. I'm waiting about 20 minutes to give me time for sharing my point if we have time. If not,
Oh,
it's
Sister
completely
Fatima.
okay. Yes,
I'm
I put
afraid
a
that we don't
message.
have. Yes, I saw your message, and my
Oh, yeah.
idea is actually making you the closing
Oh,
statement for this, but I might not be able to give you 20 minutes. So after Ibu
no,
Nino,
no, I didn't say that. Give me
um,
20 minutes. I said that I'm waiting for 20 minutes to give me time for
oh,
sharing my points. Yes.
yep.
Okay.
Then after Ibu Nino, you can read, because I also received the document that you have. You can simply read the document, and we can conclude our session today with your.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Does
you.
that sounds good to you? All right.
Very good.
Ibu Nino, silahkan.
Terima kasih. First of all, thank you for sharing all the stories, and I understand that this is the immediate problems that you want to tackle, and you friends are very, very worried about this situation. But at the same time, there are two point of view that I can share. Probably this is also a big lesson learned to us. For refugee communities, and I'm an observer of refugee communities, one of the most important things is learning to integrate with the host communities, the Indonesian societies. Learning how, for the most easiest way, probably learning to speak Bahasa Indonesia, because yeah, turn out that it's very, very important. And also preparing for whatever it is that will come, including building skills and everything. I think that's very easy for me to say, because I'm not in your position. I understand that. But however, this is the perspective of me, and an observer, and I've been observing refugee communities. I've been to Pekanbaru as well, visiting one shelter to another. I know that there was also a program for putting young refugees to universities back in Pekanbaru. I understand that. I also know that. So I somehow can imagine what the situation there right now. And I've been to Aceh. I've been to many places. So I can understand, imagine. Yeah, probably I can imagine your situation. But the thing is that in this kind of situation, it's something that's unforeseen sometimes. Not foreseen, but in this immediate problem, I couldn't offer anything other than we will try to advocate. But this advocacy work is also something that needs time to have even like small result of it. Yeah. And again, in the meantime, probably we will think. Let's think about what to resolve these immediate problems, and also preparing the refugee community, learning from what have happened, like learning to integrate with the society. Yeah, I think that's the very closing statement that I could give. Given the situation that all friends here are very, very not in a very calm emotion and everything, yeah, because of the situation. Yeah. And yeah, that's probably
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mbak Nino. And if I may quote a little bit from what Hafsar, a refugee champion, who is now the Secretary General of APRN, said earlier, is that we might not be able to solution in one day, but it's important for us to keep talking to each other. And I believe in a very safe manner, and potentially where we can contribute with each other. Because I believe that since the very beginning, I joined working on this issue. If we stick together, all of us, even in this call, I don't think we can even solve. So let alone if we actually, breaking each other apart. So Thank you very much for everyone who attend this call. We are going to listen from Sister Fatima, and that will be our closing for this session. Thank you so much for Swaka as well. So Sister Fatima, the floor is
Okay, thank you
yours.
so much for giving
And
me the opportunity.
you can
As
wrap
you
it
know,
up. Yeah.
as a refugee representative who understand the refugees problem since 2021, I'm going to share some important points as a problem and as the issues of refugees in Indonesia. I know that UNHCR, IOM, JRS, SWACO itself are trying their best to help the refugee as much as they can, but I raise these points maybe to get more attention once again from this organization that work for refugees. Refugees in Indonesia, as you know, face significant challenges, particularly with the reduction of financial and health assist that happened recently, as well as the prolonged wait for resettlement. The situation has become increasingly dire in Indonesia, which serve a transit country for many refugees, lacks a formal fair resettlement process or long-term staying. This has resulted in refugee being left in limbo life for years, with little hope of moving forward. Let's talk about the financial assistance. Initially, refugees in Indonesia received basic financial support from UNHCR, but this assist was not enough and is cut it recently. In many cases, as I said, this was not enough for covering the basic needs as food, clothing, transportation, or maybe shelter. With no work rights in Indonesia, refugees are not able to support themselves through employment, which forces many of rely entirely on charity or informal support networks. However, as the global humanitarian situation worsens, donation to refugees aid program have reduced, further deepening the financial struggles refugees face. The other important issue is health assistance. Healthcare is another area where refugees experience several limitations. While UNHCR provides some basic health services, they are often insufficient, and the coverage has been limited in recent years, especially this year, 2024. Many refugees suffer from untreated chronic illnesses, mental health issues, and condition exacerbated by the difficult living condition in detention center or maybe unforced resettlement. The financial construction on aid organization have also meant that refugees face higher barrier to accessing adequate health care, leaving them vulnerable to physical and mental health determination. The other problem is for long wait for resettlement. Perhaps most harrowing challenge refugees face in Indonesia is the long-term waiting for resettlement. Many refugees flew their home countries to escape violence, war, and persecution, only to face years of uncertainty in Indonesia. While some may eventually be settled to the third country, but the process is very long, 5 to 10 years, even longer. The waiting period is often accompanied by feeling of hopelessness as refugees live in overcrowded countries with limited legal rights or opportunity for integration. Some have been in a country so long that they have begun to grow older, losing their sense of agency and purpose. This prolonged wait for resettlement not only affects the refugees' mental and physical well-being, but also exacerbates tension with refugee communities, leading to frustration and despair. For children, the lack of education opportunities combines their challenges as they grow up without a sense of stability or a clear future. If I want to conclude my statement, I would say that the reduction of financial and health assistance coupled with their prolonged waiting for resettlement create a grim reality for refugees in Indonesia with limited opportunity for integration, no work rights, and no clear path forward. Refugees often face the harsh reality of long-term uncertainty. The situation calls for urgent international attention to provide more constant aid and explore more sustainable solution for this in limbo. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Very much, thank you, Sister Fatima. I think your statements and the appeal have actually touched pretty much all of the discussion we had, to be honest. Health situation, financial was the main priority. It happens in several cities in Indonesia. With the budget cut, I think with the and other aspect as well, the humanitarian-centric focus, the minimum of human rights advocacy, and the second part about the access to health, and last but not least is about the prolonged situation. And we touched all the procedure along the line where it actually stopping from having the solution forward. So, and you ended with the appeal for the international community, and I believe Indonesia is part of it, and to us all, which I believe is concluding with the advocacy agenda that we have today. I will not add anything on that. Thank you very much for all the participants. I deeply and sincerely apologize if I cannot accommodate all the questions being raised here. And I really hope that this has been a safe space, and I'm looking forward for Swaka and others to collaborate further to face 2025, as the challenges we see is not making things easier. But as Hafsar hope, if I may say, let's not lose hope. I think that would be all from me. I would like to say thank you for all the speakers, Hyun, Mbak Nino, Pak Masud, as well as Ibu Fatima. And thank you, Swaka, for organizing this event commemorating on the World Human Rights Day 2024. Over to you, Mas Angga. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, everyone. I just want to close the session. It has been a very great discussion, and thank you so much. I have attached the number of Swaka that you can all approach. If in case that you have anything to discuss from the communities, you can always reach us out, and we will soon again conduct a refugee community hearing session open for all refugees in Indonesia. So we will have further talks afterwards. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Mas Gading, Mbak Nino, Ibu Hyun Yung, and also
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Terima kasih. Selamat sore.
Goodbye, everyone.